The names of several Massachusetts officials have been tossed around over the past few weeks for possible posts in the Biden administration. And at least one local district attorney has been in touch with the president-elect's transition team about criminal justice issues and more. Still, she vowed over the weekend she's sticking exactly where she is for now. That DA is Suffolk County's Rachael Rollins, who joins me now. District Attorney, it's good to see you.
Always a pleasure, Jim.
What are you telling the Biden people?
Just how important it is that we have uniformity from the county, the state, and the federal law enforcement officers, where most of the unrest, Jim, that we see in the country right now is based on local police departments engaging in behavior and not being held responsible for that behavior by the local district attorney. And that's where the Office of Civil Rights from the Department of Justice would come in and look at those departments to see whether there are patterns and practices like we saw in the Freddie Gray case out of Baltimore and other places around the country. So we talked about that and some other suggestions.
Pretty important who the Attorney General is, I would say, in the grand scheme of things. Who would be your top choice?
Obviously, if our former governor, Deval Patrick, is being considered for that job, he had a long and rich history in the Department of Justice. That would be very helpful, I think, for our Commonwealth. But we need somebody who has worked in the federal government before. This is a job where U.S. attorneys do have a lot of autonomy, but they are appointed, not elected, and they report up to DOJ Maine, not the state, but Maine justice, as in Washington, D.C. So you need somebody who understands that hierarchy, has handled really large cases on the civil side and the criminal side, hopefully. But I think the Biden-Harris administration is going to make a good choice. The names I've seen are all exceptional.
Who would you like to see as the U.S. attorney for this district?
Next question, Jim.
Okay. Are you going to answer? You're not going to answer, right?
I will answer you. I mean, I think there will be a short list of people who have actually worked in that office and who have a vision for what that office could be.
Like who?
And so I'm hearing a couple of names. Natasha Tidwell is a name that I'm actually hearing, one of my former colleagues, who I think would be excellent there. I'm hearing Josh Levy as well as a possible candidate, and there have been a lot of people that are asking me the question as well.
We heard just before this taping that after months and months and months of closed-door meetings, there is about to be a police reform bill reported out to the floor of the House and Senate. Do you have any idea what's in it?
I don't. They have been very strict with respect to conforming with the requirements in the conference committee of not saying anything at all. I will be watching very closely to see whether, the big key points are going to be in there, whether it's the banning certain prohibited tactics, limiting or completely eliminating qualified immunity, or certainly holding police officers accountable and not allowing them to jump from city to city when they've been terminated. So having a sort of licensure requirement, which is what, of course, the governor proposed.
If qualified immunity is not eliminated, and I know you support its elimination, can this measure be considered a success?
I think they have a real opportunity here to limit qualified immunity, which, by the way, Jim, applies to me as well as the district attorney, right? Yeah. I'm not saying it's only for police. It would be limited for all of the individuals in government that are eligible for it. But I think that's such a large part. We really need to see a change there, because what we see, Jim, is it shields police officers from personal responsibility, and certain of these families that are not only they aren't getting the criminal charges against the police officer because DAs are fearful of doing it or complicit in the acts of these rogue law enforcement officers. They also don't get the civil remedy to be able to sue that individual and get a judgment for their family. And remember, Jim, when the judgment comes, usually that money is coming out of taxpayer dollars. So Correct. It's those same communities that you've killed my loved one. You aren't going to be charged with the crime. We can't sue you. and the money that we get from the city is our taxpayer dollars, it's just an epic fail.
Let's, speaking of killings, let's talk about Sean Ellis, with whom you and I have had many discussions. Obviously, Trial 4, he was the subject, the Netflix thing, charged with killing police detective Mulligan in the 90s. 2 hung juries, a conviction overturned, and right after you were elected, but before you took office, the interim DA dropped the charges. Here is you on my show, this is also in Trial 4, right after you were elected, then on the radio with me a couple of weeks ago, and then you'll hear when Sean and his lawyer were with me a couple of days after that, you'll hear from his attorney. Here they are.
I am going to make sure that we are looking at everything with a fresh set of eyes, and if we believe that mistakes were made on our part or with respect to our partners in law enforcement, we'll be talking about those as well.
So you have no intention of taking another look at this?
I didn't say that I wouldn't take another look. What I said was...
Are you taking another look?
I am going to be looking at every single thing that our office has done. If there are open matters in it, for sure.
This will not be the last time you hear my voice on this issue. We are looking at everything that has happened here.
Do you have hope that she could ultimately declare exoneration for Sean?
I think she could. I don't know if she will, but I think she could, based on all of the evidence that's been developed in this case. And to give Sean the opportunity to not be a convicted felon, go and live the rest of his life as the person that he is, and not drag that ball and chain around with him on this gun conviction.
Is the gun conviction all you're looking at, District Attorney?
Yeah, that's the only thing that's left in the Sean Ellis case as far as convictions go. But I think there's much more to be said here. So remember, in Trial 1, Jim, there was a guilty of possession, but a hung jury and a mistrial on the armed robbery of the possession of the gun, right? And the murder that allegedly used that gun. Second trial, same thing, mistrial because of a hung jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict. And then finally a conviction on the other 2 in the third trial, which Judge Ball then granted the motion for a new trial. So what we are looking at is whatever will be filed with us, we will consider whether there's a motion for a new trial on the gun. And as far as I'm concerned, Jim, this case has a lot of very glaring constitutional violations that have occurred. Mulligan himself, the victim, was being investigated, as we've seen and know now fully, with respect to several internal affairs and possibly anti-corruption matters, which would mean it was a crime, not just a policy violation. We know Sarah, Robinson, and Brazel were all indicted. Brazel turned on Sarah and Robinson, but they were all indicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And then Detective Keeler, who's a name I've heard, unfortunately, far too many times, was intricately involved in this case. So we need to look at some of these officers that were dirty, quite frankly, and see what other cases they might have touched.
What does that mean? And you look at them and then, you mean in terms of other cases that may need to be revisited. But, you know, beyond the gun issue, as you know, both the interim DA Pappas and then and now Police Commissioner Willie Gross said they were dismissing the charges. Well, here's Gross at that press conference right before you took office.
Sean Ellis is culpable. What does the evidence look like after 25 years? The witnesses and the strength. And the decision was based upon that, not innocence at all.
Not innocence at all. And Rosemary Scapicchio, that soundbite I played for you, District Attorney, said the ball and chain was the gun conviction. I would argue the ball and chain is the last official word on the case from Willie Gross and the interim DA was that he did it. Don't you have some obligation to visit that issue as well?
For sure. I think I do. And I don't think this is, as I've said to you before, Jim, I don't think this is the last you'll be hearing about that case. And that is not the last you'll be hearing about Sean Ellis, I think.
So it's not inconceivable at the end of the day, you could issue a declaration exonerating Sean Ellis if you found the evidence took you there.
Well, there are procedures that would have to be followed with respect to that. But, 16 days before I was inaugurated, this was swept through by a person who didn't receive a single vote to get his appointment. He was alive and happened to live in Suffolk County, and I believe that's why he was appointed the acting district attorney. You have to be a resident of Suffolk County in order to get that job. Remember, I won the primary, Jim, and miraculously, the then DA decided he wasn't going to sit out the next 3 months and had to leave to go to a law firm. This individual was appointed, and I was elected to be the person I'm being right now for the people of Suffolk County. Without saying any further, I can tell you this is not the last time you'll hear me speaking about Sean Ellis, and I'm confident that won't be the last you hear from this office about what it is he's done or who it is he will hopefully become.
We'll keep at it, and apparently so will you. Rachael Rollins, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.